9:35 a.m. The trading floor on the 78th level of Pearson Sterling was packed. The clatter of keyboards, phones, ringing off the hook. The air was thick with pressure and caffeine. Everyone's eyes were glued to their Bloomberg terminals, where every number meant millions of dollars. Then suddenly, clap, clap. Two sharp claps cut through the chaos. Silence. Total. Landon Pierce stood at the center of the room. A flawless Tom Ford suit, silver-gray tie, and eyes cold as steel. Every step he took felt like a strike of a conductor's baton in a suffocating symphony. He slowly raised his hand, and his voice echoed through the PA system. In a world of assets and liabilities, he said, voice calm and heavy with intent, some people choose to be liabilities. Miss Reyes here seems to have made her choice. All eyes turned to the far corner of the room where the most modest desk sat tucked behind a massive stone column. Ava Reyes, in a white blouse with her hair neatly tied back, was typing the final line of a spreadsheet. She looked up, calm. Two security guards approached. They said nothing, just pulled her arms behind her, cuffed her with a swift practice snap. The click rang out sharp and metallic across the crowded floor. Madison Blair, VP of Marketing, raised her phone to record a smirk creeping across her face. Knew it. She whispered to Kyle beside her Payless shoes, totally a scammer. Ava didn't look at Landon. She looked at Madison. She looked at Kyle. She looked at every smirking face, every person who had once called her sweetheart, every person who had treated her like furniture. Her eyes weren't afraid, only remembering. As she was led through the lobby, a small notebook fell from her pocket. One of the guards kicked it aside like trash. On a nearby TV screen, the financial news played, "The Justice Department moves closer to dismantling Wall Street's largest money laundering network." The camera zoomed in on Ava's face. No guilt, just a cold, unshaken calm. Right before the elevator doors closed, Ava turned and looked at Landon. She didn't say a word, just a flicker of a smile, small, quiet, but enough to tighten something in his chest. The doors shut. Landon stood there staring, and for the first time in years, there was a crack in his gaze. 10 months earlier, Ava Reyes shut the door to her small Brooklyn apartment. She took off her glasses, shrugged out of her cheap coat, and stepped into another world, a cramped room, filled with intensity walls covered in documents, diagrams, photographs. At the center was an old photo. A man in work clothes stood in front of a modest home that had since been repossessed by the bank. Her father. Beside the photo, a crumpled Social Security card, a loan rejection letter, and a clipping from the local paper reporting the closure of the factory where he worked. Ava stared at it all, as if willing herself never to forget. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, the words he'd said after losing his retirement to a high-efficiency investment fund run by a firm like Pearson Sterling. "They don't see us, Ava. To them, we're just rounding errors." She closed her eyes, silent, then opened them, razor-sharp. Ava had once been a rising star at the Department of Justice, the youngest ever to lead a case against a major bank. But she gave it all up. No notice, no trace, all to become an invisible contract assistant inside the very firm run by the man behind it all, Landon Pierce. We see her training. In front of the mirror, she tests old, worn-out outfits, shoulders slumped, eyes avoiding contact. Her voice was small and timid. She's learning how to disappear, to become forgettable. Pearson Sterling took the bait. On her first day, she was placed at a desk tucked behind the company's luxury espresso bar. No one noticed. She watched. They flaunted Rolexes, talked crypto, and referred to people as assets or liabilities, like it was a game. Morality had no seat at that table. Madison Blair mocked her shoes in the elevator. Vintage, huh? A mocking laugh. Kyle typed the wrong number in an email and blamed her in front of the team. Ava simply bowed her head and apologized. At night, she returned to her apartment, connected a disguised USB, synced the day's data, and taped a new string to the wall diagram. Every small action during the day, every smile, every mistake she let slide, was a step in the grand plan. She memorized passwords, glimpsed over shoulders. She photographed documents fresh off the printer. She recorded break room conversations using a device hidden in her car key. No one knew that the woman quietly tapping spreadsheets wasn't just a contract assistant. She was a ghost, trained, driven, and completely invisible. And she was hunting. Monday, 8:12 a.m. "Sweetheart, make me a cappuccino light foam, please." Madison Blair said it loud enough for everyone in the meeting lounge to hear. Ava stood up. No reaction, no expression. She turned left, but didn't head into the break room. She accidentally walked into the adjacent conference room, empty. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought this was the break room." She bowed quickly, apologizing over and over, then stepped out. In those 5 short seconds, her eyes had already scanned the whiteboard, filled with notes about a multi-million-dollar merger deal. The kind of intel the FBI would love. Wednesday afternoon. She placed a file on the desk when Kyle, the smug analyst, spilled his entire coffee cup on it. He burst out laughing. "Oops, bet you're used to cleaning up messes." Ava quietly picked up each soaked, mocha-scented page. "I'll reprint them," she said softly. During lunch, she headed to the print room. No one was there. She opened the back panel of the copier, removed the temp drive, and quickly inserted a disguised USB stick. Every document ever scanned, internal contracts, offshore agreements, was stored there. A gold mine. The next day, Landon Pierce walked past her desk. He didn't look at her, didn't stop. He tossed a stack of documents onto her desk like trash. "Copy this. 50 sets, now." Ava picked it up, calmly. Inside was a draft packet, plus an unedited appendix, a list of shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands. An oversight by the assistant director? Maybe. But to Ava, it was gold. She didn't use a regular phone camera. She used an encrypted document scanning app, routing the files via VPN to a secure server in DC. That same night, back in her tiny apartment, she added 3 new names to the web on her wall. She pinned up a screenshot from an internal email sent by Kyle, the one she'd hacked using the same password he used for both Netflix and his company login. No one knew. No one suspected. Every snide comment, every time she was dismissed, was another brick in her fortress. And Ava, she was smiling. Ava sat alone in the data backup room. No cameras. Just the distant hum of a printer echoing down the hall. She plugged the disguised USB into the temporary drive. Her eyes locked on the screen, and then she saw it. A hidden line of code buried deep in the system, FX Delta Loop Cayman, a trading algorithm. It automatically siphoned thousands of micro-withdrawals from retirement funds into offshore accounts. Transactions dispersed by time and geography, slipping past every audit algorithm. This was the final proof. The problem: the algorithm wasn't stored on a standard server. It lived on a private server system inside a secure room, protected by biometric access and 2 layers of encryption. She couldn't get in, but Landon could. Ava had watched him for weeks. He had a habit: Thursday nights after hours, he stayed late to play online chess with a mystery opponent rumored to be Elon Musk himself. She studied the building's electrical schematics. The 78th floor server system ran on a secondary circuit, one that could overload if all charging stations activated simultaneously. Thursday night, 8:17 p.m. She sent a signal from her laptop in the backup room. The auxiliary circuits surged. The 78th floor suffered a brief blackout, 11 seconds. Alarms blared. Systems rebooted. Landon stood up frowning and called IT. Staff began to evacuate the floor. In the chaos, Ava slipped into his office. She didn't need to enter the server room. On the wall was a digital art frame displaying stock charts. It drew power through a USB port connected to Landon's main computer. Ava crouched, swapped the USB charger with an identical-looking device. But inside was something far more dangerous, a man-in-the-middle tool. A Wi-Fi sniffer and encryption keylogger used by cybersecurity forces. She had 90 seconds. She ducked behind the desk, just as a janitor unexpectedly walked in. He whistled, oblivious, pushing his mop cart past her. Ava held her breath, motionless. When he was gone, she reset the desk items, closed the door, and slipped away. 3 days later, the device sent back the system's master password, L. Pierce Maestro 88. She didn't smile. She knew the game was only just beginning. Landon Pierce stood by the office window, staring out over the city, bathed in light. He wasn't angry, he was suspicious. Last week, a longtime partner had called him at midnight, asking about a deal no one should have known about. Internal audit had begun receiving anonymous emails disturbingly specific. One word in particular made him freeze heretofore. No one in this company used that word except for one person. Landon walked into his private IT suite. Give me the full log of all access to the FX Delta Loop system over the past 30 days. Flag any low-level workstations showing anomalies. The result didn't surprise him. There it was, an unauthorized access to the algorithm. From a no-name contract assistance terminal, Ava Reyes. Landon didn't flinch. He picked up a glass of wine, took a slow sip, eyes fixed on the screen. Interesting. He didn't call security, didn't summon legal. He had another plan. He instructed IT to create a decoy folder on the server labeled with an irresistible name, Client Transfers Q3 Internal. Inside were planted documents, fake contracts, offshore account lists, crafted to look painfully real. But every file was embedded with clear digital markers, framing the downloader as a data thief. Landon knew Ava wouldn't be able to resist. He sat in a dark room watching the system logs. At 10:42 p.m. on Tuesday, the folder was accessed by Ava. Full download. He smiled. Got you. He called legal, instructed them to prepare termination paperwork. He wanted it perfect, a performance. The next afternoon, he stepped onto the trading floor. 2 security guards followed close behind. He clapped twice. Silence. He began the show. Ava was escorted out exactly as he had planned in front of the entire company, with a betrayal file he'd authored himself. And that was his greatest mistake, because Landon Pierce didn't know he wasn't the only one playing chess. The elevator doors closed. Ava stood between the 2 security guards, hands still cuffed. No one said a word. Then one of them reached into the inside pocket of his blazer and pulled out a key. Click, the cuffs snapped open. The other handed Ava a phone. It was ringing. She lifted it to her ear. A firm voice came through. They took the bait, Agent Reyes. All teams are in position. Ava didn't respond. She removed her glasses and dropped them into a trash bin by the wall. She smoothed her hair and adjusted her coat. Her eyes no longer looked dull or defeated. Now they were cold, sharp as steel. When the elevator reached the lobby, it wasn't local police waiting. It was a full FBI tactical unit. Lead Agent Johnson gave Ava a nod. The floor is yours. Ava clipped her Department of Justice badge to her lapel and stepped back into the same elevator, this time with a team of federal agents. No one spoke. No one needed to. Floor 78. Landon Pierce was standing in the middle of the trading floor, finishing a speech about rooting out internal corruption. His face gleamed with pride, coffee cups still in hand. The elevator doors opened. Ava stepped out first, head held high. No cuffs, no fear. Behind her, 4 fully armed agents. The floor went silent. Landon froze, his brow furrowed. His mouth opened about to say something, but nothing came out. Ava pulled out a sheet of paper. "Landon Pierce," she said, voice steady, but loud enough to fill the room, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit money laundering, financial fraud, and making false statements to federal authorities." Madison Blair dropped her phone. The screen shattered. Kyle backed away, mouth agape. The agents moved in, cuffing Landon in front of the entire company. A VP slumped into his chair, face pale as paper. Landon thrashed, shouting. "Who are you?" Ava stepped forward, leaned in whispering, just loud enough for him to hear, "I'm the legacy of everyone you ever destroyed. And today, I've come to collect." Johnson turned to another agent. "Secure Pierce's personal server," he ordered. He was kind enough to gather all the evidence against himself in one place. The security cameras recorded everything. A public execution this time, the predator unmasked. 3 weeks later. On the TV screen, Landon Pierce, wearing an orange prison jumpsuit, wrists shackled, his hair, now completely gray after just days in federal custody. His body is noticeably thinner. The news ticker blared across the bottom of the screen. "Former CEO Pierce, sentenced to 150 years, longest sentence in Wall Street history." The camera slowly panned to the headquarters of Pierce and Sterling. The revolving door still turned, but no one was coming in or out. A maintenance worker stood on a ladder, removing the gold letters from the marble wall, "Pierce and Sterling." The high-pitched whine of the drill echoed like a funeral hymn. Madison Blair sat in a cheap cafe in Queens. Her eyes were red, and her hands were clenched tightly around her phone. On the screen was the video she had once gleefully recorded, Ava's arrest. Now it was a viral meme with millions of views, but the comments had changed. This aged like milk. "Who's laughing now? Birkin Barbie, HR nightmare in heels." She wore a gray hoodie baseball cap, pulled low, trying to hide her face. Once a darling of the scene, now she was untouchable. Every brand had dropped her. Her LinkedIn was flooded with thousands of mocking comments. Kyle, the colleague who once spilled coffee on Ava's documents, sat across from a recruiter at a small finance firm in Jersey. The recruiter glanced at his laptop, eyebrows raised. "There's a video going around. Can you explain it?" Kyle swallowed hard. Sweat was forming at his temples. He knew. The last door had just slammed shut. Several other employees at P&S were under investigation. Some had assets seized. Others were blacklisted across the industry. An empire once thought untouchable had become a case study in every business ethics course in the country. The final scene of this chapter is a simple newspaper headline. Justice Department returns $1.2 billion to victims of pension fraud. And beneath it, a photograph, an elderly man embracing his son as he receives a check. Tears were streaming down his face. Ava wasn't in the picture. She didn't need to be. Erie, Pennsylvania, a small town in the Rust Belt. On either side of the road stood red brick houses with peeling paint front yards overtaken by weeds. The once proud steel mill was now just rusted frames and a faded sign that read, "Space for lease." An old Ford Focus pulled up in front of the community center at the end of the block. Ava Reyes stepped out carrying a stack of folders and a laptop bag. No one recognized her. No one said her name. And that was exactly how she wanted it. Inside was a simple room, filled with folding tables and white plastic chairs. About 15 people, most with grey hair and weary eyes, sat around the table, clutching papers they barely understood. On the whiteboard, a sign in bold letters read, "Legal assistance, pension support, no fees." Ava walked in and offered a gentle smile to the volunteer, handing out water. She didn't introduce herself. She simply asked Mind if I helped walk them through this part. Ms. Lorna, 73, who had worked as a warehouse clerk for 31 years, sat nearest. In her hand was a restitution check. "I never thought I'd see a single cent," she said, eyes misty. "I thought this was buried for good." Ava nodded. It almost was. But someone decided to dig it back up. An older man with deep brown skin and a slight frame pulled a Justice Department letter from a plastic grocery bag. "My son told me not to trust it, but I still hoped." He smiled faintly. "Turns out the government didn't forget about us this time." Ava didn't tell them it had been her behind it all. She didn't need to. She sat beside him and helped fill out the verification form. Each signature, each nod, felt like salve on decades-old wounds carried by forgotten people. 2 hours passed. No microphones, no stage, just honesty. A middle-aged woman poured Ava a cup of coffee. "Are you a lawyer?" Ava paused for a moment, then smiled. "I used to be. Now, I just try to help, however I can." Near the end of the session, an elderly man stood up. He wore a faded denim jacket and walked with a limp. In his hands was a worn photo, him and his late wife in front of the steel mill, taken in 1981. "We used to believe that if we worked hard, stayed honest, things would be okay," he said, voice trembling, but steady. "But they took everything. The pensions, the house, the faith." The room fell silent. He looked at Ava. "I don't know who you are, but thank you. Thank you for letting us see justice, even if it came late." Ava stood, walked over, gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "I do this for my father. He believed in that too. And he lost everything." Their eyes met. Nothing more needed to be said. When the session ended, people filed out, some with checks, some with hope. Ava stood outside the door, hands in her coat pockets, watching them walk off into the morning light. An elderly woman turned back and took Ava's hand. "Will you come again?" Ava smiled, a real smile this time. Soft, unguarded. "If you need me, I'll be here." She stepped onto the sidewalk and looked up at the sky. The sun was just rising above the worn rooftops, casting gold across the sleepy street. No more office lights, no more mind games, just peace. For the first time in years, Ava didn't feel like she had anything left to prove. She was no longer the hunter in the dark. She was just Ava, a regular person, among regular people. And that was the real victory. Final line on screen. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one no one notices. There are some stories that don't need superheroes' magic or weapons of mass destruction, just one person with enough resolve, enough pain, and enough courage not to turn away from the truth. The story of Ava Reyes wasn't just a battle between justice and corruption. It was a reminder systems can be rigged, power can be abused, and cruelty can wear a $1,000 suit. But even in the darkest places, light can come from the one no one notices, from an invisible contract assistant, from a daughter carrying the memory of a father who lost everything to betrayed faith. Ava didn't bring down Pearson Sterling with fists. She didn't yell, didn't slam tables. She watched quietly. She gathered. She remembered. She turned their insults, their mockery, into fuel. Every time they dismissed her, she didn't shrink, she sharpened. Because she knew The less they saw her, the more powerful her strike would be. That's the greatest lesson in this story. You don't need to be the loudest or the most visible to make a difference. You just need to stay true to why you started. You might be underestimated, overlooked, even humiliated, but if you hold on to your purpose, if you hold on to the truth, then when the time comes, you'll be the one to change the entire game. In a world where kindness is often mistaken for weakness, Ava is a reminder that compassion does not cancel out strength, that justice doesn't have to be loud to be effective, and that sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't watching the villain fall, but helping the broken rise, hold their heads high, and keep going. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt invisible, underestimated, or wanted to rise but didn't know where to begin, remember Ava Reyes. Remember that some battles don't need blood. They just need an unshakable belief. And if you want to hear more stories like this, journeys of lost resilience and ordinary people doing the extraordinary, subscribe to Toch Story today. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We tell the truth. We tell what matters. And maybe one day, we'll tell your story too.